In a city under a starry night sky, chaos suddenly erupted as meteors began striking the city. People panicked and started running in every direction, trying to save their lives while alarms rang throughout the streets. An emergency announcement echoed through the city. Warning: Sector 7, Liang City is under attack. Residents, please seek shelter in an orderly fashion. Countless meteors descended from the sky toward the city, blazing red as they tore through the atmosphere. Among those fiery meteors was a mysterious blue meteor, clearly different from the rest. The blue meteor descended rapidly and struck a black-haired boy who was running away from the chaos. The moment it hit him, a violent surge of energy exploded outward. Blood spilled from the boy's mouth as the core of the meteor pierced into his chest and entered his heart, radiating an overwhelming energy throughout his body. The scene then shifted to Liang City No. 1 High School. Inside the training ground, thousands of students stood in groups wearing their school uniforms. The atmosphere was tense as everyone waited for the placement examination to begin. From above, an announcement was made to all the students, reminding them that only by getting into the Hongji class would they have any hope of becoming elite martial artists in the future. A muscular instructor with reddish-brown hair stepped forward and explained that the placement exam would simulate the college entrance exam. He stated that it would be divided into a cultural exam and a martial arts assessment. The total score would be 750 points, with cultural subjects accounting for 225 points and martial arts for 525 points. He encouraged everyone to apply what they had learned and do their best. His tone then became much harsher as he emphasized that only the top 10 students would be allowed to enter the Hongji class. He announced that the cultural exam would begin shortly and instructed everyone to enter the exam hall in order. Among the students, the same black-haired boy from earlier stood quietly while clenching his fist. In his mind, he thought about the opportunity to become a martial artist. He remembered how he had suddenly fallen into a coma during his first year of high school, and how his parents, worried about his health, had arranged for him to take a 2-year sick leave. As he moved forward, a provocative voice stopped him. A group of bullies led by Fun Rue blocked his path and mocked him for appearing at the exam after being absent for 2 years due to illness. They ridiculed the idea that someone gone for so long would compete for the special class. Chen remained calm. Brushing Fun Rue's hand aside, he told them they should focus on passing the exam themselves before worrying about him, then walked away coldly, leaving them briefly stunned. One of Fun Rue's lackeys angrily recalled how Chen used to be bullied in 10th grade and questioned his sudden arrogance, suggesting they should deal with him after the exam. Fun Rue quietly noted that Chen Du's grip strength seemed stronger than expected. Another subordinate advised against causing trouble now, since being discovered would disqualify them from the exam. It would be better to wait for the martial combat section. The scene shifted to the examination room, where Chen Du sat at a computer ready to begin. Nearby, Fun Rue revealed a faint sinister smile as he considered that if Chen Du were accidentally injured during the combat exam, no one would question it. A quiet plan formed in his mind. Chen Du began the test as the first question appeared on the screen. The next question asked for a brief description of the world's background and the first day of the High Martial Era. This was common knowledge, and the history quickly replayed in Chen Du's mind. In the year 2842 of the Old Era, humanity discovered an extraterrestrial civilization, which soon launched an invasion of Earth. In response, humanity resorted to nuclear weapons. During the conflict, a colossal monster from outer space appeared with the intention of devouring the planet, triggering a total war involving all of humanity. The aftermath brought nuclear winter, and more than 5 billion people perished. Yet disaster also brought unexpected change. Under global nuclear radiation, the human body began breaking its natural limits and gradually evolved. On August 27, 2860 of the Old Era, the life force intensity of all adults reached level 2. This marked the birth of a new generation with extraordinary strength, known as martial warriors. They soon became humanity's primary force in the struggle for survival. With this transformation, the Old Era ended and a new age began, the High Martial Era. The exam continued with more questions about major historical events and influential figures. But to Chen Du, they were all basic knowledge. He finished the entire test quickly and confidently pressed the submit button. His expression remained calm because he knew the cultural exam posed no difficulty for him. As expected, he had achieved a perfect score. However, he felt no excitement. The illness that had kept him away from school for 2 years had not truly been an illness. Every night, he had been pulled into a strange space where the rewards he obtained awakened his mental energy, giving him the ability to remember anything at a glance and never forget it. Because of this, even after missing 2 years of classes, he still had the confidence to take the exam. Even so, he clearly understood the situation. No matter how perfect his cultural score was, it only counted for 225 points. The martial combat exam would determine the outcome, so he returned home to prepare. When he arrived, Chen called out that he was back. His father, a burly man working in the kitchen, responded cheerfully that dinner was almost ready. His little sister ran out to greet him and nearly tripped, anxiously reminding him to be careful not to drop his exam admission slip. Dinner was simple but warm. The three of them sat together at the table in a relaxed atmosphere. During the meal, his father suddenly took out a small bottle of medicine and asked if Chen knew what it was. Chen recognized it as qi and blood powder and asked where his father had obtained it. His father laughed and placed some food in Chen bowl, explaining that since Chen was about to take the special class exam, he had bought the qi and blood powder to help improve his score. Deeply moved, Chen quietly said that even without these things he could still pass the exam. His father simply rubbed his head, offering quiet reassurance. His father gently told him not to overthink things. Even if he could not become a martial warrior himself, their family could still support Chen and his sister in pursuing that path. He simply needed to eat well and train properly, and they would find a way to manage the expenses. Hearing this, a strong sense of resolve formed in Chen heart. He clearly understood the sacrifices and expectations his family had placed on him. Back in his room, Chen sat quietly in thought. A single bottle of qi and blood powder cost tens of thousands of yuan, yet his family was far from wealthy. In this world, those who failed to become martial warriors could not even guarantee their own safety. With the martial combat exam scheduled for the next day, he reminded himself that he had to give everything he had. Sitting cross-legged on the bed, he prepared to enter that mysterious space again. As his consciousness slowly sank into darkness, he soon opened his eyes inside the familiar world filled with ice and glittering crystals. Ever since his coma, he had entered this crystal space every night while asleep. Around him, the shadows of monstrous creatures growled and moved restlessly, ready to attack at any moment. His mission was always the same. Numerous monsters would attempt to destroy the central crystal, and he had to fight to protect it. If the crystal was destroyed, he would fall into a coma for the entire following day. However, there was a strange rule. If he died while protecting the crystal, he would quickly wake up in the real world full of energy. In the beginning, because he was afraid to risk his life, he often failed and remained in a coma. Only after discovering the rule that death meant rapid recovery did his progress begin to improve. Each time he successfully defended against a wave of monsters, his mental energy increased, granting him extraordinary memory and strong comprehension. This was the reason he could achieve perfect scores in his studies. A system notification appeared, announcing a 30-second countdown before the next wave of monsters arrived, along with a note that rewards would only take effect the first time a defense was completed. Chen remained calm. As the monsters surged forward, he charged directly into them, striking with precise and decisive movements. His sword techniques flowed smoothly as his body moved through the enemies, every swing leaving sharp trails of light. After eliminating the final monster, he landed lightly on the ground, calm, yet carrying a quiet killing intent. Though a few wounds covered his body, Chen exhaled in relief and opened his status panel. He believed his current strength might still be insufficient to enter the special class and become an elite martial warrior. He had already defended against many waves of monsters. Just then, the system sounded another alert. A system alert announced that the fifth wave of monsters was about to arrive and instructed the player to prepare. Chen gaze sharpened as he readied himself for the next challenge. A gigantic red dragon soon appeared, releasing a thunderous roar before unleashing a stream of destructive flames. Chen immediately focused. Without hesitation, he gripped his sword and rushed forward like an arrow through the sea of fire. Evading the scorching flames, he closed the distance and began attacking the dragon's scales. Moving quickly across the dragon's back, he searched for its weak points while maintaining his balance. The battle was intense. Enraged, the dragon roared and swept its massive tail toward him, creating a powerful gust. Relying on his experience, Chen flipped through the air and narrowly avoided the strike. After experiencing countless deaths in this space, he had gradually learned the dragon's attack patterns and rhythm. Blue energy gathered around his body, as he prepared to counterattack. Chen released his strongest technique, the flowing light sword art. A brilliant wave of sword energy shot toward the dragon's head, triggering a violent explosion that blasted both of them apart. Their strength appeared evenly matched. During a brief lapse in focus, Chen was struck by one of the dragon's attacks and clutched his arm in pain after landing back on the dragon's body. He reproached himself for being careless, though he realized the injury was not serious. The experience gained from countless previous failures allowed him to endure the impact. The dragon roared again and turned its massive head toward him, preparing another attack. Chen steadied himself, forcing his mind to remain calm. With renewed resolve, he lunged forward and launched another assault. The enormous dragon towered above him, but Chen remained composed. Using his speed and agility, he moved swiftly through the air, avoiding the dragon's attacks and closing in repeatedly. Sweat ran down his face as he maintained relentless pressure. When the dragon released another torrent of flames, Chen anticipated it and leaped into the air to avoid the attack. Recognizing the advantage of his smaller and more agile body, he seized the moment and struck. His blade pierced the dragon, drawing a roar of pain as blood burst from the wound. Gathering his remaining strength, Chen delivered a powerful slash aimed at ending the battle. The strike echoed through the spiritual space as he forced the dragon downward. With another decisive blow, he slammed the creature into the ground, the impact shattering the surface beneath it. As the dust settled, Chen stood before the defeated dragon. Its massive body lay motionless, while his sword remained embedded in the ground, marking the end of the hard-fought victory. A system notification appeared, congratulating Chen for successfully defending against 5 waves of monsters. As a reward, his spiritual power increased, and he obtained a new technique called the immortal contemplation method. Chen was momentarily stunned by the unexpected reward. Soon after, another notification appeared, reminding him that the next wave of monsters was about to arrive. Regaining his composure, he focused again, realizing that every moment in this space was important for his growth. From the darkness, a new group of enemies emerged. A horde of zombies with glowing red eyes appeared, their menacing forms indicating a different and more dangerous threat. Back in the real world, Chen sat quietly on his bed, reflecting on what had happened. He realized the monsters inside the spiritual space were all stronger than him, and there were nearly 30 of them. Instead of rushing into another battle, he decided to first study the newly obtained immortal contemplation method. As he activated the technique, a glowing blue interface appeared before him, signaling the beginning of his training. When he focused on the method, his consciousness was drawn into a vast watery expanse, and the digital interface slowly dissolved within that mental world. In front of him stood a colossal shadowy figure whose size completely dwarfed him. Chen soon understood that this giant figure represented the immortal contemplation method itself and would serve as his training partner during spiritual cultivation. Returning to reality, Chen remained seated in meditation on his bed, while a faint blue aura surrounded his body as he practiced the technique. His concentration was eventually interrupted when his sister opened the door to call him for dinner. As Chen removed his shirt to change, his sister paused in surprise after noticing his newly defined physique. Slightly startled by the change, she remarked that he seemed more handsome than before. Chen smiled with quiet confidence and playfully ruffled her hair, asking if he had not already been handsome before. She quickly protested and told him to stop messing up her hair, though she could not help wondering to herself whether her brother had always looked this impressive. The next day, Chen said goodbye to his sister and father before leaving for the exam. His father reminded him to be careful on the road. When he arrived at the gymnasium, Chen stretched his body and could clearly feel the improvement in his physical condition brought by the immortal contemplation method. Soon after, his old bully Fun Rue appeared with 2 companions. They mockingly greeted Chen, questioning why someone who had been absent for 2 years would still bother to attend this special class assessment. One of Fun Rue's companions sneered that it was still better than someone who could not even pass the cultural exam. Chen responded calmly but firmly, asking what he meant. A faint confident smile appeared on his face as he thought that this time Fun Rue might be the one unable to participate in the exam. Angered by the remark, Fun Rue warned Chen not to push his luck. Chen replied that he had not mentioned anyone by name and that they should not assume he was referring to them. The tension grew until a young man with short black hair, a friend of Chen stepped in to calm the situation and reminded them that the assessment was more important. As Fun Rue and his group walked away, he turned back and left a final warning for Chen Du to wait and see what would happen. After they left, Chen Du's friend grabbed him anxiously and said that he was in trouble. However, Chen Du remained calm and assured him that he could handle whatever came. His friend then explained that things were different now, especially after Chen Du had been absent from school for 2 years. Chen Du's friend explained that Fun Rue had become arrogant because his uncle had recently become the director of the school's academic affairs office. He also mentioned a rumor that the director had secretly leaked this year's martial arts exam questions to Fun Rue. Hearing this, Chen Du narrowed his eyes and realized he might have to remain cautious in case Fun Rue attempted to cooperate with the teachers. Before they could continue discussing it, an official announcement interrupted them. The martial arts exam would consist of 2 parts, a strength test followed by combat duel. Students were instructed to proceed to their assigned areas for the strength test. Chen Du's friend commented on his calm expression and told him not to overthink things before reminding him to get in line. The first test was a strength assessment. Each examinee had to strike a punching bag with full force, and the student with the lowest score in each group would be eliminated immediately. The surrounding students quietly discussed how strict the rule was. As a small drone camera hovered nearby, Chen Du calmly analyzed the situation. Knowing there was still a combat duel afterward, he decided conserving strength was important. With that strategy in mind, he clenched his fist as a faint blue aura gathered around it. His plan was to rely on speed rather than waste energy. Nearby, Fun Rue cracked his knuckles as a sinister red aura surrounded him. He arrogantly declared that strength was what truly mattered. The first group's assessment began. A clear contrast appeared between Chen Du's calm focus and Fun Rue's confident expression. Fun Rue launched a powerful punch, his arm wrapped in swirling red energy as it struck the target. The punching bag trembled under the impact, and the force created a shock wave that scattered dust and debris, even causing Chen Du, who stood some distance away, to stagger slightly. Fun Rue's companions immediately cheered, praising his strength and calling him impressive. One of them remarked that Fun Rue's power was close to 1400 Jin and pointed toward Chen Du, suggesting someone would soon be eliminated. At that moment, a flash of purple light appeared as another fist struck the bag. The surrounding crowd gasped in surprise. Fun Rue turned back in disbelief as the result appeared. A punch of 1500 Jin achieved with a life force intensity of only 5.1. Students began murmuring in astonishment, wondering which class Chen Du belonged to and why his name had never appeared among the top 50 students the previous year. In the school office, Teacher Ling reviewed the results of the morning test. According to normal standards, a life force intensity of 5.1 should only produce about 1,000 Jin of punching power. Yet this student had reached 1,500 Jin. He wondered how someone from a regular class could display strength that surpassed even students from the elite classes. He suspected that the explanation might lie in Chen Du's martial arts technique rather than raw strength alone. Teacher Ling instructed his assistant to gather all available information on the student named Chen Du. After reviewing the file, his curiosity turned into surprise. Chen Du, who had been absent for 2 years, had already achieved a martial arts proficiency of 55%, and Teacher Ling suspected that it might now be even higher. Meanwhile, Chen Du remained calm despite causing a stir during the test. Observing the situation, Teacher Ling quietly decided to watch him closely during the afternoon practical combat exam. The scene then shifted to the vast, empty arena where the practical battles would soon take place. Bright lights illuminated the arena, creating an atmosphere of anticipation as students gathered for the combat assessment. Standing before them with a list in hand, Teacher Ling officially announced the start of the duels and instructed the students whose names were called to step forward. The first matchup was announced: Chen Du versus Fun Rue. Chen Du stepped onto the stage with a calm and focused expression, while Fun Rue approached with a confident and arrogant grin. Around the arena, students began discussing the match. Although many acknowledged Chen Du's impressive strength test score, most believed Fun Rue would win since real combat relied more on martial skill than raw power. At the center of the arena, Fun Rue stood armed with 2 polearms. He mocked Chen Du, dismissing the earlier incident between them as luck and warning him that he would not be so fortunate this time. Chen Du remained composed and replied calmly, expressing hope that Fun Rue could maintain his confidence for a little longer. The duel began immediately. Fun Rue lunged forward, his weapon wrapped in fiery red energy, as he launched a fast and aggressive strike. He continued pressing forward, swinging his polearm in a wide arc that produced blazing trails of energy aimed directly at Chen just before the strike landed. Chen raised his hand. With a flash of light, a large ornate sword appeared in his grip and blocked the incoming attack. The weapons collided, but Chen strength quickly became evident. He parried the blow with ease, sending Fan Rue stumbling backward as blood spilled from his mouth under the force of the impact. Struggling to steady himself, Fan Rue's thoughts raced. The opportunity to enter the prestigious Hanzi class was at stake. Driven by anger and desperation, his eyes glowed red as he declared that the spot would be his. Gathering his energy, he launched a furious attack, known as Wolf Fawn. A powerful burst of energy spread across the arena. As the technique crashed toward Chen despite the force behind it, Chen remained calm, weaving through the chaotic energy slashes with controlled and precise movements. Furious that his attacks were failing, Fan Rue roared and raised his weapon for a desperate overhead strike. Chen stepped aside at the last moment, and the weapon slammed into the arena floor, shattering the ground and sending fragments flying. As the dust settled, Chen stood with only a few minor scratches on his face. He calmly assessed the situation, noting that fighting a real opponent was slightly different from battling monsters in the crystal space. Seeing an opening, Fan Rue charged again, pouring his remaining energy into a powerful thrust. Their weapons collided in a bright burst of power as Chen calm blue energy clashed with Fan Rue's fiery orange force. During the exchange, Chen executed a refined technique. By controlling the flow of his energy, he created a pulsing force that first withdrew and then surged forward, breaking Fan Rue's stance and throwing him completely off balance. With Fan Rue's stance broken, Chen immediately pressed the advantage. He launched a decisive counterattack, releasing a surge of ice-blue energy that engulfed his unstable opponent. The impact forced Fan Rue backward as he coughed up blood, losing his grip on his weapon, which clattered onto the arena floor. Instead of finishing the fight with his sword, Chen stepped forward and delivered a swift punch. The strike landed directly on Fan Rue's face, the sound echoing through the silent arena. Fan Rue collapsed instantly, knocked unconscious before the stunned crowd. The surrounding students were shocked by what they had just witnessed. Some could hardly believe that Chen had actually won, while others questioned how such a gap in strength could exist, with one even suspecting that Chen might have used performance-enhancing drugs. Teacher Ling quickly restored order. He instructed the medical team to examine Fan Rue and told the next pair of students to prepare for their match. As Chen prepared to leave the stage, Teacher Ling called him back. Chen approached respectfully and bowed, apologizing that he had failed to control his strength properly during the fight. Teacher Ling reassured him that injuries were common in combat and advised him to be more careful next time before telling him to go home and rest. Internally, however, Teacher Ling was deeply surprised. Although Fan Rue had been heavily injured, Chen had emerged without a single scratch. To him, this was not simply a victory, but a complete domination caused by a large gap in martial skill. After Chen left, Teacher Ling turned to his assistant Wang Kai and, recognizing the importance of what he had seen, instructed him to contact the headmaster immediately. Wang Kai confirmed the order at once. Later, walking through the quiet school corridors, Chen reflected on the day. It was still early, and he knew his father and younger sister would not return home for some time. He soon arrived at a training room that contained a virtual combat cabin. Although he could not afford private combat training, the school provided these virtual cabins for students. By entering the system, they could be matched with opponents of similar strength and fight in a simulated arena. Chen thought about how most of his recent training had been focused on battling monsters in the mysterious crystal space. Because of that, he had rarely participated in virtual battles, leaving his rank at a relatively low bronze level. As he prepared the machine, his thoughts returned to the earlier duel. After such a humiliating defeat, Fan Rue might use his connections to cause trouble, possibly interfering with his chances of entering the elite Hanzi class. Looking at the open training pod, a plan began to form. The results of virtual battles were recorded on the Blue Star Youth Leaderboard, also known as the Genius List, a ranking so prestigious that even many Hanzi class students struggled to appear on it. With determination, Chen stepped into the virtual cabin and closed his eyes, preparing to carry out his plan. He would fight his way up the Blue Star Youth Leaderboard. Chen realized that by achieving a high ranking, he could secure his place in the Hanzi class through merit alone, bypassing any possible political interference. As the virtual combat cabin activated, his avatar appeared in the digital world, wearing a hoodie with bunny ears. Inside the virtual space, Chen accessed the holographic interface. Since gaining access to the crystal space, he had rarely used the virtual cabin, so he decided to begin with a warm-up match. To conceal his identity, his avatar materialized wearing a comical pig mask. Standing in the empty white arena with his sword in hand, Chen looked around and wondered where his opponent was. A female voice suddenly mocked him from behind and above, commenting that his reaction time was too slow. Before he could even turn around, a purple-haired girl wielding dual daggers descended from above and launched a surprise attack. Chendu's avatar was immediately forced onto the defensive. The mysterious girl followed her ambush with a powerful kick, giving him almost no time to react. Although he was knocked slightly off balance, Chen managed to block the strike. The girl smirked and remarked that his reaction was decent. Holding her daggers ready, she reminded him that this was not a school test, and she would not politely wait for him to prepare before attacking again. Chen steadied himself and raised his sword as blue energy gathered around him. Admitting his earlier mistake, he warned that he would not give her another chance for a surprise attack. When the girl rushed forward again, Chen moved with great speed and created an afterimage. Her blades sliced through the illusion while her momentum carried her forward, striking only empty space. Taking the opportunity, Chen launched a counterattack using the Azure Dragon Point Pierce. However, the girl easily deflected the strike. Calmly observing his technique, she pointed out that he was using a piercing move like a basic sword slash, questioning whether he truly understood the technique. Effortlessly blocking his attack, she offered a brief piece of advice. The 4 forms of the flowing light sword art, she explained, should not be rigid. One should focus on the essence of the martial art rather than simply following its forms. Her words immediately triggered a realization in Chen behind the mask. His eyes widened as he considered why sword techniques needed to remain confined to fixed forms. While reflecting on this insight, he also wondered how she had recognized his sword style. But his brief distraction proved costly. The girl instantly appeared behind him and warned him not to lose focus. Chen was shocked by her speed, realizing he could not even clearly follow her movements. With her daggers raised, she stood behind him and remarked that he had been careless. As defeat became inevitable, Chen could only question who this mysterious opponent truly was. Purple energy flashed in her eyes as she delivered the final strike, decisively defeating his avatar. The system soon confirmed the result. Spray Bear has been defeated. The match results soon appeared. Chen had lost to the opponent, known as Little Girl Who Sells Nukes, costing him 10 victory points as he was teleported out of the arena. Back in the preparation area, Chen reflected on the battle. His mask was now broken, and the girl's advice echoed in his mind. He should think more about the essence of the martial art itself. As he stared at the system interface, a realization gradually formed. Among the 4 forms of the flowing light sword art, the only technique he had not fully mastered was Azure Dragon Point Pierce. As he reconsidered it, he understood that although it was a piercing move, its true nature resembled an assassin strike. Until now, he had been fighting too directly and honorably. An assassin's strength, however, lay in sudden attacks and unexpected angles, completely different from his straightforward approach. The insight excited him. Wanting to test this new understanding immediately, Chen queued for another match. This time his opponent was a large, muscular fighter wielding a heavy chain weight. Chen sighed slightly at the contrast, going from a cunning opponent to a brute force fighter. As the match began, the brute hurled the chained weapon forward. Chen advanced with blue energy surrounding him, prepared to face the attack directly, believing his superior martial skill would give him an advantage. However, the opponent quickly launched a wide-area attack called drawing a line on the ground, forcing Chen to adjust his approach. Chen evaded the strike and responded with a sweeping sword technique known as Golden Geese across the sky. The opponent scoffed, criticizing Chen for using the sword improperly and warning that a slightly higher skill level did not justify reckless attacks. With a powerful pull, the brute yanked the chain of his weapon. The massive weight that had missed its target was dragged back through the air, swinging toward Chen like a giant pendulum. Facing the incoming attack, Chen remained calm. A confident look appeared in his eyes behind the mask, as he quietly questioned whether brute force alone could determine victory. At the moment the weapon approached, Chen moved smoothly aside. His body shifted with controlled precision, allowing the enormous weight to crash into the ground instead. Dust and fragments scattered from the impact. In the next instant, Chen appeared behind his opponent with the tip of his sword aimed at the man's neck. The brute stared in confusion, unable to understand how Chen had moved behind him so quickly. Using his new insight, Chen executed Azure Dragon Point Pierce, not as a direct thrust, but as a sudden and unexpected strike. The system soon announced the result. Chen had defeated Wang Dekui, earning 10 victory points. Standing quietly after the match, Chen held his sword and reflected on the battle. It was the first time he had used Azure Dragon Point Pierce in the way it was truly intended. Deep in thought, he began considering a more fundamental question revealed by the fight. What was the true nature of a sword? Gradually, an understanding formed. Martial skill was not simply about precise movements. True mastery lay in endless variation. A technique could be firm and powerful or flexible and subtle, adapting freely rather than remaining fixed in form. The realization continued to unfold in Chen Du's mind. A technique could be obvious and direct, or completely hidden. A martial artist could strike with the explosive force of thunder or move with the quiet persistence of flowing water. At that moment, he finally understood the deeper purpose of the Azure Dragon Point Pierce. The technique was meant to show that a sword could serve both honorable combat and silent assassination. It was a tool adaptable to any situation. Lifting the pig mask slightly, Chen revealed a confident smile as the new understanding settled in. A sword, he realized, was not defined by rigid forms. Its true potential depended entirely on the imagination and intent of the wielder. Just then, a system notification appeared, announcing that his flowing light sword art mastery had increased to 90%. Satisfied with his progress, Chen ended the session and logged out of the virtual training pod. Back in reality, fatigue from the session quickly caught up with him. Letting out a tired sigh, a simple thought crossed his mind. He was hungry. At that moment, his smart wristband vibrated and displayed a message. It congratulated him for entering the top 100,000 of the Blue Star Youth ranking. Chen stared at the notification in disbelief. The Blue Star Youth ranking covered young fighters across the entire planet. He immediately requested more detailed information about his position. The results surprised him. He ranked first in his city, Liangcheng, 7th in the district, and 6,219th on the global youth leaderboard. A wide smile appeared on his face as he realized what this meant. With such a ranking, his admission into the prestigious Hanzi elite class was almost certain. The scene then shifted fully back to reality. The wide campus of Liangcheng No. 1 High School came into view as Chen walked toward the school entrance with renewed confidence. Suddenly, someone called his name and stopped him. It was Funo, the stout dean of student affairs, a man known for his unpleasant attitude. The dean immediately criticized Chen for lacking manners and not greeting a teacher properly. Although cautious, Chen politely greeted him. Nearby, students began whispering among themselves, noticing the disciplinary armband the dean wore. The dean continued pressing Chen, announcing that he was responsible for inspecting student appearance and questioning what Chen was wearing. Chen calmly replied that it was simply the school uniform. Some students began laughing at the situation, while others quietly revealed that the dean was Fun Rue's uncle, the same student Chen had defeated earlier. Many suspected that he had come to seek revenge. The gossips soon turned hostile. One student claimed to have heard that Chen only won his previous match by using banned drugs, while another expressed disappointment, saying they had believed Chen strength was genuine. As the rumor spread, the crowd's attitude began to shift against him. Dean Funo, clearly holding a grudge, began poking Chen with a disciplinary stick, criticizing everything from his hair to his posture as unacceptable. Despite the open hostility, Chen remained calm and simply questioned the dean. Chen calmly pointed out that his clothing fully complied with school regulations and asked which part was considered unqualified, directly challenging the dean's accusation. Angered that a student would question him, the dean's expression twisted with rage. He shouted that Chen dared to talk back and raised his disciplinary stick to strike him in front of the gathered students. However, the blow never landed. Chen caught the stick effortlessly, his expression cold and steady. Furious, the dean threatened to report him for insubordination and have him expelled. Just as he mentioned reporting the matter to the headmaster, a calm voice suddenly interrupted, asking if someone was looking for him. The dean froze in place. Two distinguished figures approached, the school's headmaster, Li Mu, and the mayor of Liangcheng City, Wang Quan. Their arrival immediately changed the atmosphere. Seeing his superior, Dean Funo quickly abandoned the confrontation and hurried over to the headmaster, eager to report what he described as Chen Du's misconduct. But Headmaster Li Mu raised a hand, silencing him before he could continue, clearly indicating that he already understood the situation. Ignoring the dean, the headmaster turned his attention to Chen Du and asked if he was the student named Chen Du. Surprised but composed, Chen Du confirmed his identity. The headmaster explained that they had come specifically to meet him and introduced Mayor Wang Quan. The mayor warmly congratulated Chen Du, remarking that after becoming #1 in the city and entering the top ranks of the Blue Star Youth ranking, he wanted to meet the young talent in person. The announcement stunned everyone present. Students who had been gossiping moments earlier stood speechless, and even Dean Funo was left frozen in disbelief. The revelation that Chen Du ranked within the top 10,000 of the Blue Star Youth ranking spread through the crowd, triggering immediate discussion. Many students quickly realized that with such strength, Chen Du would never have needed any banned drugs to defeat Fun Rue. The earlier rumors instantly collapsed. While the students continued whispering about Chen Du's ability, the teacher who had previously criticized him could only sit down helplessly, overwhelmed by the situation. Shortly afterward, Headmaster Li Mu and Mayor Wang Quan asked Chen Du to accompany them to the conference room to discuss an important matter. Chen Du agreed and followed them without hesitation. Outside the conference room, Chen Du walked alongside 2 other outstanding students. From his memories, he quickly recognized them as Lu Ba and Mac Loidak, 2 of the 3 top talents of Liangchong Martial Arts High School. The 3 students entered the room together where the mayor and the headmaster were already waiting. It was the first time the school's top 3 geniuses had gathered in one place. Although they were known as the strongest students in the school, they had never actually met before, leaving the atmosphere slightly awkward. The 3 students exchanged brief nods and greeting before falling silent. The meeting began quickly as Mayor Wang Quan went straight to the main topic. He explained that 100 cities within the Tuvan region would jointly host a large competition for graduating students. Each city would select 3 students based on their martial rankings as of 6 p.m. the previous day. The event, called the Battle of 100 Cities, would last 3 days and take place at a designated high school. Each participating team would be led by a martial artist of level 15 or higher. The rewards were considerable. The top 10 contestants would receive bonus points for the college entrance examination along with significant financial rewards, including at least 10 additional exam points and 100,000 yuan. Hearing this, Chen Du's expression grew serious. After explaining the conditions, the mayor asked the 3 students if they were willing to participate. Lu Ba first questioned why the competition would not follow a traditional arena format. The mayor clarified that the event focused more on real combat experience and warned that the competition could be extremely dangerous, even life-threatening. Despite the risks, Chen Du felt confident. Based on his current abilities, he believed he could rank within the top 20 of the entire region, and with continued progress, reaching the top 3 seemed possible. Mayor Wang Quan then reassured them not to place too much pressure on themselves. He described the event as an opportunity to gain experience and understand their standing among other talented students, even if they failed to reach the top 10. Without hesitation, Chen Du was the first to raise his hand and agree to participate. Soon after, Mac Loidak and Lu Ba also accepted. The mayor appeared pleased with their response and praised them as representatives of the younger generation. He then dismissed them, telling them to return to their classes while the departure time would be announced later. As Chen Du left the meeting, his real motivation became clear. He was not competing for fame, but for his family. If he could secure a position among the top 3, his parents would no longer have to work so hard to support the household. With that thought, his determination strengthened. He resolved to claim one of the top 3 places. Chen Du soon arrived at the classroom reserved for elite students. Immediately, he noticed a difference from ordinary classrooms. The desks here were not labeled with names. Unaware of the unspoken rules, he chose an empty seat and sat down. Trouble appeared immediately. A tall and heavily built student with a fierce appearance slammed his hand on the desk and shouted loudly. His name was Fo. He demanded that Chen Du leave and questioned who he thought he was for daring to sit in that seat. Chen Du remained completely calm. He placed his hand on the desk and slowly stood up, ready to face the challenge. Standing directly across from the towering Fo, Chen Du showed no sign of backing down. Despite the clear difference in physique, Chen Du looked up at the larger student without any sign of fear. Inwardly, he found the situation somewhat absurd. Even in an era centered on martial cultivation, some people still relied on crude schoolyard intimidation. Just as the confrontation was about to escalate, a hand landed on Fo's shoulder. It was Mac Lloyd-Dak, who calmly stepped in and explained that Chun-Du was new and unfamiliar with the rules of the elite class. Chun-Du felt a chill run down his spine. He had not sensed Mac Lloyd-Dak approaching at all. From this alone, he realized that Mac Lloyd-Dak's strength exceeded his own by a considerable margin. Recognizing the difference in ability, Fo had no choice but to step back. Trying to preserve some dignity, he muttered that Chun-Du had only been spared because of Mac Lloyd-Dak's intervention. After Fo left, Mac Lloyd-Dak explained the rule Chun-Du had unknowingly broken. In the elite class, seating positions were determined entirely by strength. Liu Ba continued the explanation, gesturing around the room. Every month, the elite class held a seat ranking battle conducted through real combat. The 10 lowest-ranked students would have to attend class standing for the entire following month. Chun-Du was surprised by how intense the competition within the classroom was. Mac Lloyd-Dak added that the rankings for the current month had already been finalized. Since Chun-Du was a new student, he would need to claim a position through a challenge match. Hearing this, a thoughtful smile appeared on Chun-Du's face. He asked whether the ranking offered any other benefits besides seating, since that would determine how much effort he needed to invest. Mac Lloyd-Dak confirmed that higher rankings brought better rewards. The key factor was that ranking determined how many cultivation resources each student received every month. As he finished speaking, he casually took the seat marked number 1. The mention of resources immediately caught Chun-Du's attention. Realizing the opportunity, he decided he needed to aim as high as possible. With clear enthusiasm, he stated that the challenge was definitely worth attempting. At that moment, a teacher with pink hair and a red armband appeared at the doorway. He signaled for everyone to prepare, announced that class was beginning, and instructed the students to move to the nearby combat training hall. The scene shifted to the large combat hall where the elite class assembled in orderly rows. The teacher explained the rules to Chun-Du. As a new challenger, he was allowed to issue up to 3 challenges, and his final ranking would be determined by the outcomes of those real combat matches. Without hesitation, Chun-Du summoned his sword, stepped forward, and clearly declared that he wanted to challenge rank 10. His decision surprised the teacher, who had not expected the new student to aim directly for the top 10. The rest of the class immediately began discussing the bold challenge. Some students were skeptical, remarking that Chun-Du seemed calm and straightforward, but had chosen a very risky target. Even the teacher privately doubted that Chun-Du could succeed. The teacher admitted that although Chun-Du's combat techniques were impressive, his life force intensity was still much lower than that of the other elite students. Because of this gap alone, challenging someone in the top 10 seemed nearly impossible. Chun-Du, however, was not concerned. He knew that the resources given to rank 10 were 50% greater than those given to rank 11. Faced with such a difference, the risk was worth it. His opponent, Fo, stepped forward with a mocking laugh. Swinging his heavy war hammer, he ridiculed the newcomer for speaking boldly and warned him not to cry after being defeated. Chun-Du remained calm and simply confirmed that Fo was ranked 10th. Fo responded with a vicious grin, saying that was correct and that Chun-Du had chosen the wrong opponent. The teacher officially started the match and instructed Fo to put on protective gear before entering the arena. Watching from the side, the teacher believed that letting Chun-Du experience a defeat might serve as useful training. In the center of the large combat hall, the two stood facing each other, Fo holding his massive war hammer and Chun-Du gripping his sword. When the teacher gave the signal to begin, Fo, whose life force intensity had reached 6.2, arrogantly swung his war hammer in provocation. He clearly believed Chun-Du was nothing more than an easy target. Chun-Du remained motionless, calm, and focused. A faint current of spiritual energy surrounded him as he entered a composed state of combat readiness. His gaze remained steady, unaffected by Fo's taunts. To him, the battle had already begun before the official signal. Fo suddenly charged forward like a storm. The warhammer cut through the air and crashed downward with tremendous force as he declared that Chun-Du was too slow. The watching students quickly began discussing the situation. In their view, even a difference of 1 level in life force intensity created a nearly impossible gap. Many believed Chun-Du had already lost. Nearby, teacher Ling stared in surprise at the measuring device. Just the day before, Chun-Du's life force reading had been 5.1, yet had already risen to 5.2 overnight. Meanwhile, Fo laughed confidently, convinced his powerful strike would end the match immediately. The hammer slammed into the ground with a loud explosion, sending dust and debris across the arena. But a moment later, Fo's expression froze. He realized he had missed. An uneasy chill ran through him as he sensed that Chengdu had already moved behind him. Chengdu stood firmly in position, his posture precise and controlled. He had not dodged in panic. Instead, he had waited for the perfect opening. He executed Azure Dragon Point Pierce. A sharp surge of Azure sword energy burst forward as Chengdu thrust his wooden sword. The attack broke through Fo's defenses instantly, launching the massive fighter into the air like a leaf caught in a violent wind. Fo was completely unable to resist the force of the strike. His heavy body crashed onto the arena floor with a dull, chilling thud. Combat Hall number 1 fell into complete silence. All eyes turned toward Fo. Chengdu was about to press his attack when the instructor stepped in and stopped him. Lang Ban grabbed his arm and asked in astonishment whether Chengdu's combat technique had already reached Tier 1 mastery. Chengdu nodded calmly and explained that he had broken through the previous night. The casual response left the experienced instructor stunned. Advancing nearly 10% in a single night was extremely rare. Lang Ban soon announced the result loudly across the hall. Chengdu was the winner. The declaration echoed through the arena and marked the sudden rise of a hidden talent. The students who had previously doubted him now looked at him differently. Their earlier disdain had disappeared, replaced by respect and curiosity. The arena soon filled with excited discussion after the match had been decided with a single strike. Chengdu's victory had broken the common belief that life force intensity alone determined the outcome of combat. From that moment, he was no longer considered an insignificant student. When asked whether he wished to continue challenging for a higher ranking, Chengdu declined. His goal had been to secure the greater resource allocation granted to the top 10. Since he had already achieved that, there was no reason to reveal more of his abilities. Soon afterward, several students gathered around him, asking for his contact information, and trying to build connections with him. The combat hall briefly resembled a fan gathering, as everyone attempted to befriend the newly recognized talent. Chengdu could only respond with an awkward smile. He had always preferred a quiet life and had not expected his victory to attract so much attention. Fo's attitude changed the most. The same student who had acted aggressively moments earlier now showed complete submission, flattering Chengdu and asking for forgiveness. As the crowd gradually dispersed, Lang Ban quietly watched Chengdu leaving the hall. He understood that a small city like Liangtan might no longer be enough to contain a talent of this level. It might be time to consider opening a new path for the young prodigy. After training ended, Lang Ban called Chengdu over and asked him to visit the principal's office after class. His expression carried clear expectation. Inside the office, Headmaster Limu sat behind his desk, deep in thought. When a knock sounded, he calmly invited them in. Lang Ban entered with Chengdu and immediately addressed the main issue. He asked whether it would be possible to secure a special direct admission quota for Chen due to top martial universities, such as Everest Martial University or Mount Tai Martial University. Limu was slightly surprised by the request. Recommending a student for such a pathway required extremely strict qualifications. He explained that admission to the top 8 martial universities required a combat technique to reach at least Tier 1 perfect completion. Although Chengdu was already close, the remaining 1% represented a significant barrier that many people were never able to overcome. Seeing that the principal still had doubts, Lang Ban stated that words alone were not enough. He suggested letting Chengdu undergo a direct test using the combat technique measurement device in the office. Limu agreed and pointed toward the testing mannequin, a device capable of measuring power up to the maximum limit of Tier 1 techniques. Lang Ban asked Chengdu to reproduce the strike he had used earlier during the match. Chengdu stepped in front of the mannequin and took a deep breath. As he focused his mind, the room fell silent. His gaze sharpened, releasing a strong pressure as he prepared to demonstrate his true ability before the 2 senior figures. He executed Azure Dragon Point Pierce. The strike moved like lightning. A surge of Azure sword energy burst forward, tearing through the air before crashing into the target with tremendous force. A sharp explosion followed as the energy detonated against the mannequin. The destructive power exceeded what was normally expected from a high school student. Limu stood motionless as he saw the head of the testing mannequin completely shattered. He had never seen a student produce such destructive force with a combat technique. Noticing the damaged equipment, Chengdu scratched his head and quickly apologized, saying he had not expected the machine to be so fragile. Lang Ban however, was extremely excited. He declared that Chen Du possessed the qualities of a natural combat genius. His instinct for decisive strikes and his precise control of power were exceptional. In both training and combat, Chen Du demonstrated a maturity far beyond his age, almost as if he had already experienced countless life-and-death battles. After witnessing the result, Li Mu was fully convinced. He announced that the school would prioritize all first-tier cultivation resources for Chen Du in addition. If Chen Du performed well in the upcoming competition, he would personally negotiate a special direct admission quota for him. Chen Du then raised a question about the real significance of this special admission path. Although he possessed great strength, he was not very familiar with the details of higher education. Lang Ban explained that under normal circumstances, students needed a life force intensity of at least 6.5 to have a chance of entering one of the top 8 martial universities. With Chen Du's current level, following the traditional examination route would be extremely difficult. However, through the combat technique admission pathway, Chen Du would only need to reach Tier 1 perfect completion 1 month before the entrance exams. If he achieved that level, prestigious universities would send instructors directly to the school to evaluate his abilities. Chen Du then asked whether he could choose a different university even after passing such an evaluation. He revealed that his real goal was Wang Shun Martial University, rather than the highest-ranked institutions. Lang Ban was surprised. In his view, although resources at elite universities were similar, their reputation and influence differed greatly. Choosing a lower-ranked university seemed unusual. Chen Du's expression gradually became serious as he recalled a painful memory. 6 years earlier, in Yinlai district of Huxi City, a sudden attack by the giant folk had completely changed his life. Although the city's defense forces and nearby regions rushed to assist, the enemy's overwhelming strength turned the battle into a brutal massacre. The memory of that disaster still lingered in Chen Du's mind. The attack had taken hundreds of thousands of lives and left the city in ruins, carving a deep and lasting scar in his heart. That was the reason he had chosen a university close to home. Speaking quietly, Chen Du explained that his only wish was to ensure the long-term safety of his family. By staying nearby, he would be able to reach them immediately if danger ever appeared again. A determined light appeared in his eyes as he added that if Liang Tan were ever threatened, he wanted to be the first person to stand and protect his family, preventing the tragedy of that year from repeating itself. Lang Ban remained silent after hearing his words. He understood that such thoughts usually came from people who had experienced the destruction of their home. For someone raised in a peaceful family, to possess such determination meant he was someone capable of carrying great responsibility in the future. Li Mu also observed Chen Du quietly, appreciating the young student's resolve. To him, a teenager with such clarity of purpose was rare and worthy of high expectations. Chen Du then explained that he hoped to keep the 2 top universities as backup options in case he failed to enter Wang Shun Martial University. However, the principal immediately shook his head and clarified that once a direct admission contract was signed, it would be binding without exception. Lang Ban placed a hand on Chen Du's shoulder and sincerely advised him not to risk his future too easily. If Chen Du achieved a strong result in the inter-city tournament scheduled for the following month, the opportunities from the most prestigious universities would become much greater. Chen Du responded with a calm smile and thanked both men for their advice. He said he would carefully consider everything before making a final decision. After leaving the office, Chen Du had already begun planning his next steps. The recruitment period would not begin until after the inter-city tournament more than a month later, so he decided to fully dedicate this time to rapid improvement. Instead of returning home, he chose to move directly into the specialized martial training room provided by the school so he could focus entirely on cultivation without distractions. To quickly increase his life force intensity, Chen Du headed toward the Martial Technology Research Institute, convinced that the medicine he needed could be found there. In the modern martial world, 3 major powers stood at the top and carried the future of humanity. The first was the Extreme Martial Hall, whose warriors fought on the front lines against dangerous extraterrestrial civilizations. The second was the Martial Technology Research Institute, which focused on improving human strength through advanced technology. The third was the Martial Artists Alliance, responsible for maintaining social order and public security. The founder of the Martial Technology Research Institute was Douglas, a figure regarded as the second strongest person in the current civilization, surpassed by only one individual. His contributions to humanity's progress were widely acknowledged. When Chen Du entered the Institute's modern Grand Hall, he was greeted by a young receptionist with brown hair tied in twin ponytails. She was polite at first, but her expression quickly turned to shock when Chen calmly requested 3 boxes of thunderclap chi blood pills. It was extremely unusual for someone his age to request such a powerful medicine. She explained that the pills could not be purchased directly. Anyone who wanted them had to pass an endurance assessment first. The medicine was considered the most effective method of enhancing chi and blood for those who had not yet officially become martial artists, but also carried severe risks. After consumption, the medicine would transform into violent lightning energy that would surge through the user's meridians. If the person failed to maintain concentration for 30 minutes, their life could be in serious danger. Because of this, she led Chen to a testing room to verify whether he could endure the process. Chen placed his hand on the measuring device and prepared for the endurance test under her supervision. His expression remained calm and determined as he confirmed that he was ready. The receptionist activated the advanced control panel while Chen stood completely still, focusing his mind on the trial. As the test progressed, however, the data appearing on the screen caused her to freeze in shock. Her eyes widened as she stared at the unexpected results. Soon afterward, Chen casually left the institute with the medicine. The receptionist remained behind in confusion and quickly contacted the technical department, suspecting that the expensive endurance testing device must have malfunctioned. Back in his private training room, Chen studied the pills carefully. According to the instructions, an ordinary person could safely consume 1 pill per day, and even then no more than 3 pills within 10 days. Chen realized that the endurance test he had taken earlier only simulated about half the pain produced by a single pill. To him, it had felt like only a minor challenge. Determined to accelerate his progress as much as possible, Chen made a bold decision. He swallowed all 3 pills at once. He knew the pain would be many times stronger than the test, but he believed he could endure it. The moment the pills dissolved in his body, a violent surge of energy erupted like thunder. Chen pupils contracted as intense heat spread through him. The sensation felt as if every blood vessel in his body had been ignited. Brilliant blue lightning burst outward and wrapped around his body as the energy rampaged through his meridians. Gritting his teeth, Chen endured the pain that seemed to pierce straight into his bones. Facing the violent energy head-on, he forced a defiant smile. Even as lightning tore through his body, Chen shouted with confidence, asking if that was all the power the medicine had. The storm of lightning gradually faded, leaving Chen gasping for breath. His body was soaked in sweat, and although he was completely exhausted, determination still shone in his eyes. A system notification appeared, announcing that his life force intensity had increased from 5.2 to 5.3. Chen clenched his fist and smiled with satisfaction. It was another step toward his goal of 6.5. However, he soon realized a difficult reality. The pills that were supposed to last an entire month would now only last 10 days. At this rate, the money on his card would support his training for less than 2 more months. Lying on the training room floor, Chen began thinking about how to secure enough funds to continue his expensive cultivation. He quickly reached a conclusion. To obtain sufficient rewards, he would need a place within the top 2 in the upcoming Inter-100 Cities tournament. The pain and fatigue from the pills finally overwhelmed him, leaving his body temporarily paralyzed. Unable to move, but unwilling to waste time, Chen closed his eyes and entered the crystal space to continue training his mental strength. After spending the entire night fighting blue-skinned giants in that space, he had not yet achieved a complete victory, but he could clearly feel that his mental power had improved. When he returned to reality, he sat up with renewed energy. Now that he had access to the school's additional resources, Chen attended his first class in the elite division with clear anticipation. Inside the classroom, the instructor Adai appeared with a strong presence. Her fiery red hair and professional demeanor immediately drew the students' attention. She introduced the topic of the day, an advanced combat concept known as mental dependency. The class quickly became quiet as everyone listened carefully. Chen was surprised to learn that instructor Adai's life force intensity exceeded 15, placing her in a completely different level compared to the students. She explained that martial techniques were essentially tools used to draw out the body's strength. However, if a person learned to properly use mental force, their combat power could increase dramatically. Normally, the body's strength was spread throughout every muscle, but mental force allowed a martial artist to gather that energy into a single point, producing attacks with explosive power. The true essence of the technique was the ability to mobilize every muscle in the body with precise control. Chen glanced around and noticed that many of the talented students in the elite class were already familiar with this concept, and some had even mastered it. However, Instructor Adai added that when mental force had not yet reached level 10, the efficiency of such power concentration remained limited. For that reason, she advised the students to focus mainly on increasing their life force intensity to perform well in the upcoming college entrance examination. She then announced that she would test the students' current level of mental force and instructed everyone to stand up. As she spoke, she took out a short flute surrounded by a faint purple energy. At Instructor Adai's command, all the students stood up simultaneously. She explained that she would play a piece called Fatigue Melody, a sound-based technique that attacked the mind directly to test each student's endurance. Her gaze settled on Chen. Since he was a new student, she offered him the option to decline the test, explaining that the pressure might be too intense and that refusing would not affect his final evaluation. The unexpected offer left Chen momentarily surprised. Around him, the other students wore tense expressions as they prepared for the mental trial. He understood that the instructor believed his mental strength might be too weak and feared he could collapse immediately. However, Chen responded firmly that he would participate. Instructor Adai smiled slightly. She could see that his competitive spirit would not allow him to step back. Nodding, she raised the flute to begin the test and reminded the class to focus all their willpower to resist the melody, as it would push both body and mind into extreme exhaustion. The students steadied themselves, preparing for the challenge. As the flute began to play, a strange melody spread through the classroom. The sound waves formed a wave of purple spiritual pressure that filled the entire room. Chen looked up as he sensed the unusual energy gathering around him. Inside his consciousness, a gigantic purple silhouette gradually appeared and then suddenly moved toward him. Before he could fully process what was happening, the figure attacked with a powerful kick. Chen reacted immediately, raising both arms to block the strike. Although the impact was strong, he remained standing firmly in place. He realized that the technique functioned as a powerful form of mental hypnosis. Instructor Adai watched carefully and was surprised to see Chen endure the attack with such ease. To him, the pressure seemed no more troublesome than an ordinary challenge. Chen simply smiled faintly, as though the test was still not intense enough. Adai acknowledged that his mental strength was far greater than she had expected. Even so, she believed it was not yet sufficient and decided to increase the intensity to see how much he could truly endure. As the pressure rose to the next level, the other students immediately began to cry out. Many staggered as their legs weakened under the sudden strain, unable to withstand the powerful mental force. Adai observed calmly. The result matched her expectations, as most students had already collapsed at this level. Her attention returned to the one person still standing. Chen remained upright while waves of spiritual pressure surged around him. The other students looked on in disbelief and began whispering among themselves. They knew Chen came from a poor family and could not possibly afford expensive spiritual enhancement items. That meant his strength came purely from his own ability. In their eyes, he possessed not only exceptional martial talent, but also remarkable mental aptitude, a very rare combination. In another corner of the classroom, Fun Rue, whom Chen had defeated the previous day, watched with satisfaction. In his mind, the stronger Chen appeared, the more it proved that losing to him had not been shameful. A sharp cracking sound suddenly echoed through the classroom. The spiritual pressure had reached its limit, and something had finally given way. Everyone turned toward the source of the sound. The top student of the class, widely recognized as the most talented among them, had collapsed onto the floor. Even as he fell, his eyes remained fixed on Chen, disbelief evident in his expression. In his mind, he could only think that if Chen had been born into a wealthy family with better resources, he might already have been qualified to enter one of the top universities. Instructor Adai was equally shocked. The class's strongest student had fallen at level 6, yet Chen was still standing under level 7 pressure. Determined to test his limits, she raised the intensity directly to level 8. Chen gritted his teeth as the pressure finally began to weigh heavily on him. The surrounding energy grew more violent, and within his mind the purple silhouette expanded again, becoming far larger and more imposing, towering like a mountain. The struggle was no longer easy. Chen began swinging his arms instinctively, resisting the invisible yet powerful attacks pressing toward him. Slowly, he was forced backward under the overwhelming force. It felt as if an enormous weight was crushing every part of his body. The phantom strikes shook the air around him, and sweat poured down his face. The strain in his eyes became clear. Level 8 spiritual pressure was truly formidable. With a roar, Chen gathered all his strength and resisted the pressure pressing down on every muscle and bone. Watching this, Instructor Adai felt deeply impressed. She understood that mental strength was not only a matter of willpower, but also closely connected to physical ability. With his martial talent and unusually resilient mind, Chen had the qualities of a warrior capable of facing powerful extraterrestrial threats. At that moment, she ended the test. The results were quickly reported to the principal. Inside the principal's office, Li Mu reacted with surprise when he heard the report. Chen not only possessed remarkable martial ability, but also outstanding mental strength. Adai confirmed the results calmly, explaining that she had personally verified them during class. Standing nearby, Ling Yin could not hide a proud smile. Upon hearing the news, Principal Li Mu stood up immediately, clearly excited. Ling Yin confidently stated that Chen had the potential to become a level 20 martial artist, known as a soaring sky martial artist. Adai also acknowledged that such martial artists, who were capable of flight, represented a rare and powerful level of existence. Li Mu then expressed his firm opinion that a talent like Chen was extremely rare and that sending him to one of the ordinary top 8 universities would be a waste. Instead, he believed Chen should aim for one of the 3 supreme martial universities, institutions that trained future soaring sky martial artists. He then revealed important information. Black Dragon Martial University would begin recruitment after the Battle of 100 Cities. He instructed Ling Yin to ensure that Chen took part in that selection. Ling Yin immediately responded with firm agreement. Not long afterward, Chen was called to the office. He knocked politely and asked if they had summoned him. Ling Yin, clearly excited, went straight to the main topic. He asked Chen whether he knew about Black Dragon University. Chen replied that he only knew it was one of the 3 top martial universities. Ling Yin then explained that these 3 universities did not recruit students through the ordinary entrance examination system. They selected only those rare geniuses who showed the potential to break through and become soaring sky martial artists. This realm represented a transcendent level of power. To reach it, a martial artist needed a life force intensity of 9.9 and at least an intermediate Tier 1 martial technique. He continued by explaining the broader situation. Among high school students, only about half were even capable of becoming martial artists. Increasing life force intensity through medicine was extremely expensive, and many people had already missed the most important period for cultivation. Chen listened quietly, his expression calm, as if he were calculating something carefully. After a moment, he raised his head with determination and said that he was willing to participate in the Black Dragon Martial University selection. Deep down, he understood that choosing this path might eventually require leaving his family behind. But if he wanted to protect them, he had to become stronger. Ling Yin nodded in satisfaction and encouraged him, suggesting that Chen could still treat admission into one of the 8 prestigious universities as a backup plan, while focusing all his effort on the opportunity with Black Dragon University. Chen accepted the advice. For now, his entire focus would be on the Battle of 100 Cities, which would take place in 1 month. Everything else could wait until the results were known. After class, Chen returned home. From the kitchen, his mother called out warmly that breakfast was ready. Carrying his backpack, Chen walked in and greeted her cheerfully. During the meal, his younger sister kept looking at him quietly. She felt that something about her brother had changed recently. His body seemed stronger, his appearance more refined, and there was a new calm confidence about him. While they were eating, Chen suddenly shared an important decision. He told his parents and sister that starting that day, he planned to move into the school dormitory so he could concentrate fully on training and prepare for the upcoming 100 Cities War. His mother immediately became worried, afraid that he might push himself too hard and collapse again from exhaustion. His sister was also surprised, pointing out that dormitory assignments were normally decided at the beginning of the school year. Chen reassured his mother with a smile. He explained that the school had already allocated special resources for him, and that he would not train recklessly like before. Students in the special class were each given access to a private martial training hall along with a resting area that allowed them to train and recover properly. Unlike his mother, his father strongly supported the decision. Encouraging Chen, he told him to continue moving forward and to ask the family for help whenever he needed it. With his family's support, Chen felt more relaxed. After finishing breakfast, He prepared to leave for school. The whole family walked him to the door, and his mother reminded him to take good care of himself. His father called out encouragingly for him to do his best, while his younger sister jokingly told him to win first place and bring it home. After leaving home, Chen went straight to school. When he arrived at his martial training room, he saw the cultivation resources that had just been delivered: 90 bags of blood vitality milk, 30 blood vitality pills, and 4 packs of T-fold blood vitality powder. Looking at them, he could not help but sigh. Martial cultivation was clearly an expensive pursuit. These supplies alone were worth at least 50,000 yuan. For Chen, however, the sight only strengthened his determination. Clenching his fists, he resolved that from now on, aside from attending classes, he would devote all his time to training. Soon he stood inside the training chamber and issued a command to the AI system. Xiaoshan, increase gravity to 5 times normal. The mechanical voice responded immediately that the command had been accepted. A powerful pressure descended instantly on Chengdu's body. He gritted his teeth as he endured a weight comparable to several elephants pressing down on him. Training under such extreme gravity while fighting a combat robot was extremely dangerous. The system announced the start of the 4th training round, and a combat robot with glowing red eyes appeared before him. The robot rushed forward and launched a heavy punch. Chengdu raised his sword to block, but he knew that in such intense gravity, even a slight mistake could tear muscles or break bones. Instead of receiving the blow directly, he carefully redirected the attack and deflected it aside. The AI system analyzed the movement in real time and reported that the evasion had succeeded, though his energy consumption was too high and unnecessary movements should be reduced. Hearing the analysis, the robot changed tactics. It attacked from above and below at the same time, blocking Chengdu's normal escape routes. Although cornered, Chengdu smiled. If he could not dodge, he would make the robot bear the same gravity. He grabbed the robot's arm, gathered his strength, and executed a forceful throw. The robot crashed onto the floor, smoke rising from its head. However, the machine had one final function. Its arms suddenly extended like elastic and shot forward in a straight punch toward Chengdu. Caught by surprise, Chengdu was knocked back. Realizing the training had reached its limit, he quickly ordered the system to cancel the gravity field, admitting that he needed a break. After the session ended, Chengdu sat down and let out a long breath. His body had reached its limit. Instead of resting completely, he decided to use the immortal banishment visualization method to strengthen his mental power while allowing his body to recover. Closing his eyes, his consciousness entered the familiar mental space. He walked across a calm, mirror-like surface of water, while beneath that surface stretched a crimson world filled with countless grotesque, watchful eyes. Tensing his mind, Chengdu focused inward and drew all the accumulated spiritual experience points toward himself. A surge of energy flowed through his body. After meditating for some time, he slowly exhaled in relief. His mental power had increased by 0.3 levels. However, when he tried to stand up, a sharp tingling sensation ran through his spine. He had remained seated for too long, and his legs had gone numb. Chengdu muttered quietly to himself. His mind was exhausted, and his body had not yet fully recovered. Feeling completely drained, he decided that the best option was to rest. Leaning back, he lay flat on the floor and quickly fell asleep. Not long afterward, Chengdu opened his eyes again. His gaze was clear and focused. Without hesitation, he entered the crystal space, the simulated environment used to train martial techniques. His feet touched the ground of the virtual realm as he prepared himself for combat. In front of him, several giants appeared. The last time he had faced them, he had not understood their weaknesses and had failed to defeat even one. Now, however, he was confident he could try again. Resting his sword on his shoulder, Chengdu's presence was noticeably different. He had realized that the green spots on the giants' bodies were not markings, but healing energy cores. The giants roared and charged toward him. Chengdu calmly analyzed the situation. Aside from those glowing cores, the creatures were little more than moving targets. He rushed forward, immediately noticing the improvement in his control after the intense gravity training. His body felt light and agile, allowing him to slip past the giant's heavy strikes with ease. Seizing the opportunity, he struck decisively. His sword cut directly into one of the glowing green points. With a single slash, the massive giant shattered and disappeared. Chengdu stood quietly, observing the remaining giants that had momentarily frozen in place. The lightness of his movements filled him with excitement. He thought that after some rest, he would return to the gravity training room. At this pace, entering the top 3 of the 100 Cities tournament no longer seemed impossible. Time passed quickly, and the day of the 100 Cities tournament finally arrived in the coastal city of Haitan. At a luxurious hotel, Chen led his teammates inside. One of them looked around in surprise, saying it was the first time he had ever seen such a lavish place. Chen simply told him to stay focused. Suddenly, an angry voice erupted from the reception desk. Chen turned toward the noise and saw a warrior with a scarred face and a samurai-style top knot arguing loudly with the staff. The man, named Votang, was a member of the Lockton team. He demanded an explanation for why his team, despite arriving on time, was being prevented from registering. Votang slammed his hand onto the counter, causing the receptionist to recoil in fear. His killing intent became obvious as his hand moved toward the hilt of his sword. Chen narrowed his eyes, watching carefully. It seemed the man was ready to attack someone right there.